Okay, hi everybody, thanks for joining. Just going to give it a little bit longer just to let people get into the session, and then we're going to kick off. Just give it another minute or two. Just gonna give it another 30 seconds or so, and then we're going to get started. All right, let's get going then. Thanks for joining everybody who's came in today. Let's get into this. So here's what we're going to cover in terms of the session today. So we're going to have a couple of minutes just giving a bit of an overview of who we are, why we're doing this. Then we'll get into the meat of the debate, which is, do you need a Microsoft 365 backup? So we'll talk about retention gaps, how you might lose data. We'll talk about whether you can actually be protected within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So can you keep everything in that world? Harpal's going to talk to us about Acronis and their Microsoft 365 backup products. James is going to give us some detail about Microsoft 365 Business Premium, why that's an important license for you if you're under 300 seats. We'll have a little summary at the end, and then a space for some questions. Just in terms of who's here today, so for those of you who don't know me, I am Freeman, the Managed Services Director at Klipboard. I came in through Accenture, through the acquisition about 2 years ago, and I head up the Klipboard IT team. James, do you want to give us a bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, of course I will. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry. Yeah, so James Graves, a modern workplace specialist with GeoCom. For those of you that won't know GeoCom, which is probably nearly everybody on the call, GeoCom is a Microsoft reseller who works purely in the channel, and we are the largest indirect provider of Microsoft 365 services in the UK currently. And I sit in their workplace specialist team, which basically means anything Microsoft 365, Copilot, or security related in the Microsoft realm is kind of bread and butter day-to-day aspects for me. I'll hand over to you, Harpal.
Yeah. Harpal?
Let me just take myself off mute. Thank you very much, James. Cheers, Liam. Yeah, good afternoon. My name's Harpal. I'm working for Acronis and work closely with GeoCon and Klipboard. Acronis, we are a data protection cybersecurity specialist. We protect data and our customers' data globally. My role is to help and assist my partners and their end users in being able to leverage Acronis and our services.
Thank you, Harpal. Okay, so this is the first of a few sessions that we're going to run. This one, really, we're going to start with the basics. Let's talk about backup. Let's make sure we're not losing data before we get too excited about security and AI and things like that. After that, we're going to talk about identity, so human risk. We're talking about security awareness training, phishing simulation. Then we're going to move on to things like managed detection and response. So how are attacker techniques changing in terms of how they're trying to get into our Microsoft 365 environments. And then the fourth one is going to be about the front door. So how do we stop the onslaught of phishing and cyber attacks that are all coming through in terms of our email in today's Microsoft world? And the reason why we're focusing on this area, obviously, is Klipboard as an ERP company. It isn't ERP that is causing the business interruption events such as ransomware across the customer base. Unfortunately, email, like printing, CRM, ERP, is a nervous center of our business. So how many companies do you know that don't have an email? Unfortunately, I don't know any, and most people won't be able to answer that question. But if you think about everything that is in your email, and this is important for later on in the discussion about backup and data as well, that's a gold mine of information that is in there. Customers, suppliers, partners, protected conversations. It's really important, and that's what attackers are seeing as well, right? So that's part of the reason why we're working through these sessions, is to say that actually previously it was all about, I need to get into James's system, and it might be different from Harpal's system, but actually now I've just got this whopping great big target that if I can create these attacks that are highly repeatable, then I can really get access to monetize some really powerful information that I can find within those accounts. And some of the things that you see on the right hand side are some of the outcomes that we see in the customer base, which is driving us to have these conversations with our customers. So without further ado, let's get into the detail about Microsoft 365 and do you need a backup? The best place, I think, to start is what does Microsoft actually say? They created the service, so let's see what they say. And there is a document out there, and the link is at the bottom there, called the Microsoft 365 Backup Best Practices White Paper. And I've called out the very top part of that document just to give you the sort of long and short of that, where they say customers ask us, do we need to back up our Microsoft 365 data? And the answer from Microsoft is it depends. So it's not a yes, it's not a no, it's a it depends on your specific scenario and your specific needs as a customer. And whilst they won't give you an answer, hopefully the next few slides that we'll walk through will start to help you to form your own picture as to whether you think you need it. The first one I want to call out, which is a really interesting stat. How many files do you think are being created in Microsoft 365 every single day? Just think of a number, but the number that I'm going to show you is probably going to be bigger than the one that you've thought of now. It's actually 2.5 billion files per day. 2.5 billion files per day being created in Microsoft 365. And that number is only going up through things like AI usage, Copilot, transcripts, all of those things that we're using more and more as the features keep increasing in the Microsoft ecosystem. So surely out of 2.5 billion files per day, there's some stuff that we can't live without. There's some stuff in there that we don't want to lose. And ultimately, it's our responsibility as a customer of Microsoft to actually protect our data. So here's the nice Microsoft shared responsibility model. You can see on the right hand side of that graphic, there's software as a service, platform, infrastructure, and on-prem. Microsoft 365 sits as a software as a service. And if you trace that down, you can see the dark blue square. Next to it is the light blue square that says information and data. Next to the left of that, it says that responsibility is always retained by the customer. And if you look at the font that are blown up, the text that are blown up, ultimately, you're responsible for your data. Yes, you're responsible for compliance and governance and things like that. But at the same time, Microsoft is saying, look, guys, we're keeping the lights on. We're making sure that the servers are running and the network's there and you can log into your email. But if you lose data, then that's ultimately your responsibility. So just keep that in mind as we go through. And if we look at retention of data, so somebody deletes something in our environment, and we go into a brand new Microsoft 365 environment or something that we haven't changed any settings on, what are we actually getting in terms of time to get those files back if someone's deleted it? The first thing that you'll probably notice is actually we've got all sorts of different time. We've got all sorts of different retention. It isn't just one big catch-all that says, hey, don't worry, guys, it doesn't matter what you use, you're going to get 30 days or 100 days. You're not. You're going to get a mixture all over the place of different levels of data recovery time. And if you delete something out of Planner or Bookings, well, good luck, because there is no recovery path at all. And some of them further up, if you look at Teams Chat and Viva, for example, they are just keeping them for compliance. You can't actually get them back and put them into a working place. We're going to talk about the big three at the top there in terms of the Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, because that's where the most people are doing their work and actually wouldn't want to lose anything. And let's see what they actually look like and how they play out when someone deletes something. So let's talk about email. You've got an email, you delete it from your mailbox, that goes into your deleted items. Yeah, that's fine. This is all pretty standard stuff. But actually then you might have seen sometimes you've got a recover deleted items button that you can press, which is like a recycle bin of your recycle bin. Now, it's important to know that the user can actually delete that email permanently from the second stage recycle bin. And at that point, it goes into an admin only recycle bin where it's got a 30-day timer. And after that 30 days, then that email is gone. So if no one gets to it, it's going to be deleted. And just to show you how that plays out in end user world, the top screenshot is me in my Outlook. There I am, I've deleted something, I'm in my deleted items, and I find the recover items deleted from this folder button. And then at the bottom, you can see, hey, I've just permanently deleted that from my mailbox. That has gone into that 30-day timer. So that's really straightforward. Microsoft actually have guides that say, here's how to get your data and how to find it as a non-admin, as a standard user. If you take OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams, they use sort of all the same backend. The scenario plays out the same way. I delete something, it goes in my recycle bin. I then put it into the second stage recycle bin, and then I can purge that again as a standard user. I can say, no, permanently don't want that. And then the 93 days timer starts. If no one gets to that, then after that, it's gone. And it's exactly the same situation, right? So here I am in my OneDrive. I've got a transcript of a meeting that I had with somebody. I've deleted it from my OneDrive. It's gone into my recycle bin. I've then gone into my second stage recycle bin. And here I am about to permanently delete that transcript file, from my OneDrive. So just coming back, I'm putting it into the 93 days bucket here, that if no one gets to it or no one asks for it, it will be gone after 93 days. And that plays out in certain ways. So if you've been an admin of an IT environment where you've had to deal with leavers, then you'll know and have probably seen that leavers love to clear out the decks of everything from time to time when they're leaving. And I'm calling that the departing destruction checklist. So why do they do it? Well, I think they're probably covering their tracks. They've probably sent some stuff somewhere that they don't want everyone else to see. But what they do is they start that timer for you. They delete all their emails. They empty their deleted items, their recoverable items, because you can do it all through the applications that we're using. They delete their OneDrive. They empty the OneDrive recycle bins. They go into Teams and they delete messages and chats. And now you're on the hook. You've got that timer now. That started on you. So that person has left. They don't care. Maybe the person coming in, they're still trying to figure out what they don't know about their new job. They don't know what they need to ask for. And there's a timer running there that if you aren't protecting that data in 93 days or less, if it's Exchange, it could be 14, it's going to be gone. So this is just real scenarios that I see when we manage users in Microsoft 365 at scale. So talking about what's going on inside the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, can you live in that world without a third party? Well, there's some things that you can do, but I just want to be clear that they're not a backup. and we'll go through what they are. Retention policies. These are feature of purview. These are settings that you can apply to all products or individual products. You can apply them to specific users. You can apply them to specific sites, groups, all types of things, all the different things you can select within your tenant. You can exclude stuff too. And what you can then do is say, actually, I want to keep it for this long, or I want to keep it for this long and then delete it, for example. And they aren't a backup, but they are a good way of catching some of these kind of activities that we're talking about. You do need to have a Microsoft 365 Business Premium license for those features, and it needs to be applied to everyone who is in scope for the policy. And they only start protecting data after the policy is created, which is key. So they're not a backup. They're good for legal. They're good for subject access request. They're not a restore my files to last Tuesday or point in time. There are gaps. Things like voice messages won't get captured in there. It says complex for junior admins, but if anyone's been in purview, it's complex for any admin of any time, I think, to be honest with you. And ultimately, they do use up your storage quota as well. So if you're putting lots of data in SharePoint and then you turn these kind of features on, just keep in mind it's going to keep a log of everything. That might eat some data up as well. Let's just quickly talk about what the Microsoft offer to wrap up this section. Microsoft have got their own 365 backup. The good and the bad here is that it keeps it inside Microsoft's ecosystem. It stores it in Azure. That might be a good thing. That might be a bad thing, depending on what you want to do. There's some features that are missing that I think are important. No team support, no file level granular restore for OneDrive. So if somebody asks me to restore a file in their OneDrive, I have to restore everything. It's not great. And it's billed at a flat rate per gigabyte as well, rather than per user. That makes a big difference. So just finishing up on this section, what have we got? We've got a mishmash of policies and places to go, defaults that potentially mean we could lose data. Retention policies help. They're not a backup though, and the data lives within the Microsoft ecosystem. You either like that or you don't. I'm going to turn over to you, Harpal, now. We can go into Acronis.
Thank you so much, Liam. Yeah, that was really interesting in terms of just understanding and differentiating the difference between retention and backup, because it's more often that I get that, well, I've got retention, I don't need backup, but it's always important to emphasize the difference. Retention is basically like your deleted items. That is not a backup solution. I've been working in the data protection industry for over 12 years, and really what I'm seeing repeatedly right now, 365 is the most real example of where data is being lost. Not a theoretical risk, not a what if. It's actual organizations losing OneDrive content, Teams conversations, critical SharePoint data, and unfortunately only realizing until it's too late. And yeah, keen to just get the audience thinking, and I'd love you to think about it as your environment today. If someone deleted a senior leader's mailbox today, or a finance user's OneDrive, how quickly could you recover it? How confident are you that you could recover everything? Because for most organizations, the truth is 365, Microsoft 365, it feels like a safety net. It feels like it's in the cloud, so it's safe. But just because it's in the cloud, it doesn't automatically mean protected, and it definitely doesn't mean recoverable. And that's what I'm hopefully going to be able to show you in the next couple of minutes, is why 365 data loss happens, why it's not always hackers, why it's often people and process, and really the easiest fix is a proper third-party backup solution that sits outside of Microsoft. And the key outcome, by the end, you'll know whether you should take advantage of a 30-day free trial, because it's one of those areas where you only appreciate the value once you've actually tested the restores and the search functionality yourself.
Yeah.
And this slide is important because it removes opinion out of the conversation. This is Microsoft's own language, and it's one of the most misunderstood realities in 365. Microsoft, they do a great job at keeping the platform running. resilience, uptime, infrastructure scale. But what they don't do is accept full responsibility of your data in the way most customers assume. And it's in plain English, really. It's Microsoft are responsible for the availability of the service. You are responsible for the protection and recovery of the data that you put into it. And this is not me saying it, that's Microsoft saying it in their own terms. The agreement language is effectively, service can have disruptions. Microsoft isn't liable for disruptions or loss you suffer as a result. And they regularly recommend you back up your content with third-party services. This is, it's a bit of a get out of jail card moment. And what makes it risky, right, is 365 is so reliable day to day. Most organizations don't test restores until the day they need it. And the day you need it is the day that the CEO is on the phone asking, can you get it back? Can you explain retention policy? So yeah, the message is simple. Built-in capability is not the same as data protection. And it ties in with the next slide. Because Microsoft's own language is the language spells out where the responsibility sits, really. They're not responsible for data lost. Backup is the customer's responsibility. And the bullet points, look, they basically say three things. First, services change. Things get restricted, changed, removed, updated, sometimes based on the region or the licensing. Secondly, outages happen, disruptions happen. Microsoft isn't liable for the knock-on effect. And third is the key line. You're responsible for backing up the content stored on the services because it may be inaccessible during outages. And I'm not here to read terms and conditions. I'm really here to tell you the practical impact. Because when an organization loses their 365 data, it's usually because either someone's deleted it and they didn't realize it until it's outside of the recovery window. Someone's left, the data attached to their account is gone, and a compromise happens. The attacker deletes or encrypts the identity layer. In some cases, you do get misconfiguration or policy changes, which create unexpected deletion. But I think, the key question really is, if your recovery plan depends on retention behavior you haven't tested, is that a plan or is that hope, really?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because the organizations that do well are the ones who treat 365 just like any other critical system. They back it up independently, they test the restores, and they can prove recovery. Which brings us to identity, because the next slide about that part is, if it's compromised, that compromises everything as well. Next slide, please. And this slide is really about the thing most people forget to protect, which is identity. Microsoft Entra ID is the front door to everything in 365. If someone gains the wrong access here, or if an admin mistakenly happens to be able to give wrong access, the blast radius is massive. If it's compromised, the entire organization is compromised. And when you look at the risks, accidental deletion of users or groups, privilege escalation, ransomware, insider attack, misconfiguration, audit compliancy failures. So look, why this matters is, when you lose a mailbox, it's painful. When you lose a OneDrive, it's painful. But when an identity is compromised, when it's misconfigured, attackers can lock out legitimate admins. They can create new privileged accounts, delete users' objects, wipe evidence or logs. And that's why we're releasing Entra ID protection in June. And it will be included in the per gig cost that Liam's already mentioned, because identity is now one of the most targeted parts of the stack. So again, I always ask questions just to get people thinking. If someone deleted a group that controls access to your finance SharePoint site, how long would it take you to restore both the group and the access model exactly as it was? And that's what identity backup is really about. Fast rollback, audit readiness, and the ability to recover from mistakes or abuse. Next slide, please, Liam. And this is where it stops being theory. The real incident documented. Sorry, actually, next slide after this. Ooh. Well, I actually had a slide about a real life scenario, which was 1,200 365 accounts that were deleted. And it was a IT contractor who accessed the company system, and he deleted over 1,200 of the company's 1,500 365 user accounts. So the company was effectively shut down. Email, contacts, calendars gone for large parts of the organization. Customers and vendors couldn't reach their employees. The actual problem, recovery impact, dragged on for months. Stated recovery costs were about $500,000. And the reason why I like this story is because you're not talking about North Korean super hackers. This is simply a bad lever. It's an insider access misuse story, and that can happen at any organizations. And actually, it reminds me of another one scenario that I had last summer. We had a company contact us last summer. They were looking for 365 backup, and I always want to find out why now, what's changed. And one of their users in their legal team left in March. The user stored large chunk contracts in their OneDrive. Unfortunately, nobody realized until June that the key contracts they were missing. By then, the user account, the content, that had all been purged by Microsoft. The clients had to go to the organizations had to go back to the client asking for copies of the contracts that really they should be able to produce instantly. And that's reputational impact, right? That's not just inconvenience. So again, you know, if you had a senior employee leave tomorrow, could you guarantee that you'd still have access to everything that they owned, even if nobody noticed it for 90 days? And look, if the answer is I'm not sure, then this is why you implement third-party backup solutions. So what do you do without this turning into a 6-month project? You keep it simple. Acronis protects what people lose in 365. We protect Exchange Online, OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint. It's designed to be straightforward to deploy and restore from. And 3 things I'm always keen to highlight. 1, it's outside of Microsoft. You're backing up from Microsoft into the Acronis cloud platform. So if an identity is compromised, if the data deleted inside of Microsoft, you have that copy in a different system. Secondly, it's simple to run. Search is built in. So when you have someone that says, find me that email, that file, that Teams content, you're not hunting through retention policies. You're searching the backup set for that phrase, for that name, for that file name. And again, it's simple to price up. There's unlimited cloud storage for 365. And that's what finance team like. They like predictable costs. They like things that are easy to price up as well. Within the Acronis service is the ability to incorporate free anti-malware scanning of your 365 backups, because backups can be a hiding place for malware if you don't scan them. So, final question, I promise you. If you can confidently restore 365 data, if you can't confidently restore 365 data and you can't do it quickly, is your 365 environment really protected, or is it just hosted? You know, I encourage people to take advantage of the 30-day free trial. Use it to do one thing, and most importantly is test the restore, test the search, because once you've done that, then you'll immediately know whether you've removed a major business risk or not as well. And I'm sure people have got questions, but yeah, just some high level ones. If you lost a mailbox, could you restore it in under an hour? If someone left and their OneDrive disappeared, would you be able to notice before it's too late? And if Enter ID was compromised, do you have a way to roll back identity changes and prove what happened? Yeah, unfortunately, if you're unsure on any of these questions, don't wait for the incident. Take the 30-day free trial, validate the recovery when it's calm. not when it's chaos and it's too late.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I think some really interesting points in there. I think you started off on the exact line that I would take, that you do have to treat this a bit like if you had a server and you were storing files in the corner, you would back that up and you would be making sure that you didn't lose data. You know, I think it's just, as you said earlier as well, it's education, right? It's understanding
Absolutely.
that risk retention, there are gaps. Not everything is created equally. There's different things that different admins can do that can cause things to accelerate or decelerate timelines of data being lost. You know, it's a real minefield, and I think if anybody was able to answer that question and say, yes, I confidently feel I have you know, the ability to not lose any data, you know, please let me know who you are, because I would love to work with you and understand how you achieve that, if I'm honest with you. So no, thank you for that, Harpal. That was really interesting. We're going to talk to James now. So James, give us a bit of a breakdown in terms of SMB and Microsoft 365.
Yeah, absolutely. So primarily today, it's going to be talking about the Microsoft 365 Business Premium license. And as we go through this, it'll kind of start becoming apparent why we talk about the Business Premium license so much. From a Microsoft perspective, and ourselves at GeoCom, we call it what's known as the Hero SKU. And the reason we do that is because it includes some really, really effective tools inside of what's known as SMB security. If we go on to the first slide, and we can kind of start delving into all this a little bit more. But what I wanted to start off with doing was kind of set the tone a little bit for this, set the scene a little bit from Microsoft and a security perspective. So SMB market is kind of what we focus on here at GeoCom as part of our Microsoft offering. And the big thing is the SMB market is becoming more and more vulnerable than it ever has done before. Microsoft runs annually something which is known as the Cyber Digital Defense Report. And as part of that defense report, it takes global statistics and information that Microsoft have available to them from trillions of different security points that come into them every single day. And with that, they basically build this big picture, and that picture basically shows the SMB market is becoming more vulnerable and more targeted. So SMBs are, as it says on the screen there, becoming that bread and butter for cyber criminals. And the reason for that is because you'll all be well aware of the Marks and Spencer attacks, the Jaguar Land Rover attacks of the world, and all these things that have happened in recent times. And kind of one of the big core pieces of that is it causes large-scale political fallout. You know, taxpayer money gets involved in the equation, questions gets raised and answered. And as a part of that, you're tending to see that it raises more questions, it raises the profile on a political stage, which means that these organizations then become vastly more targeted by government entities that want to, you know, crack down on them and be the one that catches them with the flashy headlines, etc. So one of the things we are seeing now is that switch to targeting SMBs, which comes with far less consequences, and in most instances as well, far easier for them to potentially impact several small businesses with the same kind of cost implications as what a large enterprise business would bring to the table. We've got a piece on there that says the true impact of cybercrime is kind of unknown. The reason that I kind of like to put that in there as well as a talking point for us here is purely from the perspective of not enough people know when they've actually been attacked. So when somebody's actually had a cyber attack against them, you'll often find that it can be anywhere up to about 200 days that they can be in your systems before anybody even realizes they were there, which is absolutely mind-blowing to think about in this day and age. It really is. And obviously, I've got to mention on there as well, because the role of an MSP, so the team here at Klipboard, is absolutely essential in securing SMBs up and down the country. You know, we here at GeoCom work with hundreds, bordering on thousands of MSPs like Klipboard up and down the UK, and the role that they play in ensuring people reach compliance levels and the latest rules and regulations on an international scale in most instances is absolutely essential for people to be able to stay up to date and on target to hit certain requirements for new legislation that's coming into place, because this sort of thing is happening all of the time. And then the very last one on there, if cybercrime was an economy, it would rank as the third largest economy globally. And this number comes into obviously the trillions, as you'd expect, but it literally sits just behind the USA and China and ahead of India in terms of where it would rank in terms of, you know, the amount of income that comes from cybercrime on a global scale yearly. And like I say, that is only based on what's reported, because where in the UK you have to report a cybercrime, that's not the case everywhere else globally. So that number could be even bigger potentially, which again is a scary thing to think about out there, shall we say. It's also actually, funnily enough, from the Digital Defence Report, it's actually the fastest growing economy in the world as well, which puts it again ahead of India and ahead of China. So, you know, to think about the scale of it increasing, it's dramatic. It really is. If we jump on to the next slide for us, Liam.
Yeah.
So, bit of a landscape here, looking at it from a Microsoft perspective here. So Microsoft currently employs 34,000 full-time security engineers across the world, you know, which is pretty much bigger than anybody else that's out there currently that's doing this sort of thing. So 34,000 full-time engineers that are working on cybersecurity. 1.6 million bot-driven or fake account signups were blocked by Microsoft every hour in 2025, which again is an absolutely mind-blowing amount. But if you think of the amount of digital signups and the amount of times you hear about all these bot accounts inside of social media channels and things like that, you know, it's not hard to see or imagine, is it? 5 billion emails are screened daily on average to protect users from malware and phishing, which again makes them among the top 3 kind of email scanners globally, with the likes of Google and others. And then the last one we've got on there as well, the USA, the UK, Germany and Israel were the most targeted nations for cyber attacks in 2025. Now, I put that one on there purely because I like to compare it to what it actually said in 2024, and the UK didn't fall in the top nations in that scenario because, as you'd expect, the Ukraine was heavily involved up there. Taiwan was quite heavily up there as well. All these places that have got, should we say, you know, wars or things of that nature going on, where there's political unrest, they tend to fall higher on the scale. But for this year, you know, the UK was right up there, and so was Germany, which obviously wasn't one that appeared in there last year also. So that's really interesting that we're seeing those economies start to be targeted now, both from an enterprise, SMB, government, and so on and so forth. So again, really interesting things. If we jump on the next slide, Liam. So business premium, and back to kind of the fact at hand, shall we say. So as you'll see on here, I've put the main 3 SMB SKUs that exist out there at the moment. We've got business basic, business standard, and business premium. Business basic, business standard, I'm sure many of you on the call will be very au fait with what that includes. It's all of your basic productivity essentials that you need and your SharePoints and OneDrives, etc. Again, most people will have these and, you know, it'll fit the bill for them. Others start looking at business premium, and the reason we talk about business premium is because of that little pink dotted section you see around the bottom there with those 6 additional entities in, and I'll call each one of those out in just a few moments time. But just to touch on the business basic and the business standard for a moment, they do cover what we call foundational security inside of these. Now, this is basically giving you what Microsoft views as the absolute basics to protect yourselves. This is not giving you any real security protection. It's just offering you the bare bones to be able to ensure that you can have a front door on the building almost, if you imagine it being. So these are things like your identity and your access control. So that's your users' login credentials to access their account and their productivity tools. Exchange Online protection, which is literally doing spam filters for you almost. Many people think that is offering you email security. It isn't. It is the bare bones basic when it comes to your spam style protection that comes within there. And last but not least, mobile device management. Now, there is a product in there that's called Entra ID, which is part of your identity management. And you can enroll your device in there so Microsoft can recognize it. But again, this isn't device management. This isn't going to be, you know, managing a mobile phone and, you know, and things of that nature. This is purely around the identity of the device and nothing else. So again, bringing you some bare bones features and functionality there that's needed as a part of your infrastructure for onboarding onto Microsoft. Now, business premium, if we go on to the next slide, Liam, I'll start talking about the advanced features and how they compare for us. And the first one up, as I mentioned a moment ago, is called Entra ID. And we have what's known as Entra ID Plan 1 here. And in all honesty, the easiest way I can describe what Entra ID Plan 1 is it's all around your identity protection. So this is, again, you logging into your system, and quite often you'll have to do what's known as multi-factor authentication, or MFA for short, and that's centered around you needing to type in a, let's say, 6-digit code that comes from your phone via a text message, or you may use the Microsoft Authenticator app, for example. So a couple of different ways, but you type your password in, then you use your phone or something similar, your facial recognition, fingerprint scanner, etc., to prove that it is you through a second form of identification. Now, this overall package that comes in here contains some, more advanced features than that. And if we kind of look at this as almost like, imagine it being a nightclub and you've got a bouncer on the front door of that nightclub, and that bouncer is basically checking you are who you say you are. So you've provided your password, so you've told him your name, but then after that he's going, well, have you got your ID? That would be your multi-factor authentication coming in. And it's that, basically, that bouncer that's going to be the one that goes, do you have to show me your ID or don't you, sort of scenarios. And it's a really rudimentary way of looking at it there. They would also assist you with things like doing your self-service password reset. So you don't need to contact your IT department to do that resetting of the passwords, etc. And it really is providing those sorts of services for you so that you can gain access to the resources you need, whether they be cloud applications like Microsoft 365, it could be something like your Salesforce environment, it could be something that you have on-prem that sits on a server inside of the office and it's an application you've built as a business. Various different things it will give you access to, but that's exactly what it is doing there, proving you are who you say you are, and obviously elevating those privileges if you are an administrator as well, to make sure that you definitely are who you say you are, because you could cause some real damage if you aren't. So some really good protection there for individuals. We've gone to the next point, Liam. Intune. Now, Intune comes under that device management piece we mentioned on the previous slide. Now, Intune comes in kind of, I like to say it comes in two flavors. One's what we call mobile application management, and the other one is called device management. Now, mobile application management is for when you have something known as BYOD. Bring your own device. So you would bring your own phone with you, bring your own laptop, and you can log into the work resources. It sounds great. What this basically gives you the ability to do as a business is ensure that when people access your data and your resources, it provides some control on that device, that should they leave the business, should that laptop get lost or the mobile phone get lost, you have the ability to remote wipe your confidential business data from that. So you can't wipe everything. You don't have access to their Netflix, their social media channels, their photos on their phone. You can't see any of that. You only see corporate data, and it gives you the ability to maintain your data, protect it, and wipe it in the eventuality that a worst case scenario happens for you. From an application perspective, a device management perspective, you're very much looking at that being a fully corporate device. So you buy your phone, you buy your laptop, give it to the new starter on day one. Intune will basically put in place everything they need to get going. It will download the apps for them. It can set the device up. It can put parameters in place to say you have to have a password and it has to be 10 digits long. It really will do almost like a start to finish setup of what those devices need to do and can do in their day-to-day roles. So it's brilliant from an MSP's perspective in terms of expediting that setup process for you and making it so that new starters can start quicker, can get off the ground running, but also from the perspective of if they are working out of the office, etc., you have the ability to protect your business data again, locking the devices, remote wiping those devices if needs be, and then obviously the ability to make sure that they've got all of the work applications they need. You launch a new app, a new system, you can give them access en masse from Intune without needing to bring them back in the office and do a traditional style download and install of those applications. So very powerful tool there from device management perspective. Next point for Liam, device security. Now, Defender for Business, looking at this from the perspective of a traditional style antivirus solution. I'm sure many of you will have had something on your laptop along the lines of a CrowdStrike product, or maybe even a Acronis product in here, and various others that exist out there. Think of things like, old school Norton 360, McAfee products, and so on and so forth. Now, Microsoft Defender for Business is what we call an EDR solution. So that's extended detection and response. So it goes a little bit further than an old school AV solution like the Norton 360s of the day. And what this basically brings to the table is the ability to not just protect the device, but it will also do the remediation work after the fact. So once somebody has potentially broken into the device, how do we box them in, stop them from going any further? And as a part of that process as well, how do we then learn from that and ensure that we, kind of block that hole from coming in again? There is the piece it does before that as well, which is where it will make tailored recommendations on how to improve the security posture of your device as well. So if your laptop isn't up to date or there is bits and pieces that need doing to it, it will make those recommendations as a part of its threat and vulnerability piece that it does with its initial assessments. So again, before the point, active protection, and then things that it will do after the fact to ensure that when somebody logs back in on Monday morning, they're potentially just going to be met with a normal device, normal environment, and they'd been on the wiser as to exactly what's gone on by your admins that are doing a little bit of work in the background to remediate things and patch that hole where they got into the systems. Also important to remember that this isn't specific to any particular browser. These solutions do work across Android, iOS, Windows, etc. So they will work across any device, and that's the same for Intune, Entra, Defender, and anything else that we talk about coming up as well. Next one for me there, Liam, sorry. Defender for Office 365. Traditional email security style solution here. Looking at things like safe links and safe attachments to make sure when you press a link, it's secure. When you press an attachment, it's secure. The thing that really takes this a little bit further here, and again, looking at the digital defense report from Microsoft last year, is it's also starting to protect what we call collaboration, which means it's protecting inside of your team's environment. One of the very active threats that was there starting to be on the rise last year was people coming in via Microsoft Teams, speaking to one of your colleagues, pretending to be the IT service desk and going, oh, can you just log into this system for me? We need to just run an update. And they'd send them a link, they'd log into it, lo and behold, they've been suspect to what is in form of a phishing attack, and they've taken their login credentials away, sold them on the dark web, or even performed malicious acts and intentions themselves. So again, that was something we saw on the rise, and what Defender for Office 365 does is it will protect your users by scanning those links that get sent into them by those third parties when they click on them. Again, offering that protection not just inside your email, but also inside of your Teams environment as well. And another really important fact that sits in there as well is something that we call time of click protection, which basically means that every single time they press the link, it's checking the link is exactly what it says it is. And that's really important because some solutions will only check it the first time that you'll click on it, not every time. And that'll basically mean that you click on it the first time, it all looks great. I'll come back to that and I'll do that work later. You go click on it on Monday morning after the weekend's gone, and they've switched where that link is actually routing to. It forwards you to a malicious website, which in turn is going to throw a load of malicious malware, etc. at you, potentially executable files, things like that, stuff you really don't want people playing around with. So again, really, really important piece of technology that's built into it there. And that should leave us on to data security, which is something Liam's actually already mentioned in there in Microsoft Purview, which was them retention policies that we were looking at. Now, Purview is actually a family of products, and Business Premium is the entry point for coming into these Purview products. And I'll be completely honest, this is probably what I talk about more than anything at the moment, because it's all around data loss prevention, protecting that data, whether no matter where it is, even if it leaks off the system, it can still be protected. And then the other part of this as well that comes in is the data lifecycle aspect as well. So kind of the core pillars of Purview is around data security, data governance, and then there is the data gone off the top of my tongue there now. It's data governance, data protection, and the data loss aspect, sorry, as well, that comes in there with that. And what we're going to basically look at from that perspective is using what we call data loss prevention, which will do policies and procedures so that if somebody attempted to send out a email and it, let's say, for instance, contained a 16-digit credit card number, it would flag it to them and say, no, you can't do that. Or it may be, for instance, something silly like trying to send an attachment that had credit card numbers in it. Again, it would block that activity and say, no, you can't do that. You dictate these yourselves, of course, based on your user requirements and your instances that are needed. Also carries all the features you need to be able to encrypt your emails in the eventuality you are sending out sensitive documents to particular customers. It provides that piece where the email can be encrypted and they have to provide, say who they say they are, log into it in order to gain access to those emails and things of that nature. So again, really important set of tools. Anybody that comes under kind of compliance management rules or is interested in kind of, protecting their data, and especially in like AI solutions like Copilot, ChatGPT, those sorts of things, Purview is really the entry point into protecting your data inside of those AI tools, whether they be Microsoft or third-party based. Next slide for us, Liam. In the interest of time, I think I've chatted away quite a bit here.
Oh, we're at the end. There you go. Yep.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Easy as that. So yeah, like I said, that's kind of the overarching pieces of Business Premium, and that is the reason that we talk about it so much, is because a lot of these features and functions used to be part of what Microsoft called the 365 E5 license, which was, very, very costly E5 enterprise level license, circa £50 a user per month sort of thing. And what they did was realize that SMBs need this technology as well. So they basically took the core components, brought it down into the SMB space in the business premium license. And to be fair with you now, it's probably, in terms of Microsoft SKUs, the one that, again, is being talked about the most, purely because you get so much feature and capability, at a very, very reasonable price. And again, it's giving you all the tools and features that you need for introducing modern AI technologies like Copilots, ChatGPTs, Geminis, Claude, and all these other tools that people are currently talking about. And, Business Premium really is the center point for protecting your data when it's when people are utilizing these tools. I'll hand back over to you, Liam, then.
Right.
If anyone's had any questions or anything for us as we've gone through.
That's really, I mean, any of my customers that are part of this will know we've been using this license now for a number of years. But if you're still using an Office 365 E3 license, for example, you really need to be looking at some of this, because there are features in here that are just essential to running your tenant in Microsoft 365, let alone all the extra good stuff that James is mentioning about Intune, about Purview, for example. So, look, we'll circle back to this in terms of the summary of everything that we've gone through so far. So in terms of backup, do you need it? Well, we talked about retention by default, and things can disappear. They will disappear. Harpal shared with us that, scenarios do happen, whether it's accidental or malicious. Users can put themselves in a position where they can kick that timer off for those things to get deleted. There's a lot that, as an admin, it's a mishmash of portals and recovery that you've got to wrap your head around. There's some things that are in there in terms of policies, but ultimately, if you asked me outright, do I think you need a backup? I would say yes, I think you do, purely because I don't want to lose data, and I want to be, I think the pain of losing the data outweighs the cost of the solution ultimately for me in a simple way. And I see in terms of Acronis, Harpal's given us some great information and examples of why Microsoft take the stance that they take, how Acronis is more fully featured than the Microsoft 365 backup solution. It's off-site, it's immutable. I can speak from my own examples and my own customers that use it, that it is a set and forget solution. It will pick up new users. It will pick up new SharePoint sites automatically for you. You don't have to go in there and purchase a license or point it at a site. It is that straightforward that it's just sitting in the background to pick things up for you. If you're an IT person, you want to put your own hands on it, that's fine, or Klipboard can manage that solution for you. And as Harpal said, there is a free trial for everybody in terms of the overall solution. Just then finishing off on James's point. So Business Premium, if you're not on Business Premium today, and you're under 300 seats, you need to be looking at that. If you're over 300 seats, start looking at M365 E3. The pricing, when you bring in the other solutions that you're probably paying for in terms of your other antivirus and other areas, this is such a competitively priced package. And the things that are in there, as we just said, stuff like conditional access, which is that bouncer on the door, the multi-factor, not having to set that per user, and setting that at an organizational level through conditional access, which is part of the Entry ID feature in that license. As an admin, that's a time saver. As a business person, that is just a massive safety net around my company and the data that I'm storing in the cloud. So if you need help looking through licensing, understanding what the costs are, where am I buying things, what could I swap out, and what would help me to take advantage of that, maybe it isn't all new money that you need in terms of understanding where you can go. And so just wrapping up there in terms of our services and what we're offering to people, the Klipboard IT Protect packages, they're bundled and they are also able to be taken at an individual basis. If you're thinking about enhancing the security of your business and you don't necessarily want to change everything out and go on a massive transformational project, then these kind of packages are built to slot in over the top of what you've got today, whether it's identity or whether it's your core, which is your identity and your endpoints, or maybe you're a bit further along in a different space where you're thinking about cyber essentials or PCI and you've got more control and more requirements that you need. And we've got a range of different products there, such as the ones that we've been talking about with Harpal today, things like training, detection and response, backup, endpoints. Obviously, we talked about why we're doing the series and what we're going through. So, obviously this gives us a chance to speak to people like Harpal, but it also serves as a opportunity for us to just impart some of the knowledge and advice and guidance that we've had. So hopefully that's been useful. Look, we're going to have a quick look in the chat and see if there's any questions that I've had. We've really got 4.5 minutes left.
So there's two questions. The first was,
okay.
How does AI-based anti-malware work? Does it scan the files before they're backed up? Yes. And this is a massive differentiator. We use behavioral analysis to scan the data as it's being backed up. If we detect ransomware encryption patterns, we stop the process, we alert you. And this prevents backup poisoning, where you unknowingly back up encrypted or infected files only to find that the safety net is compromised when you try to restore as well.
Okay, we've got some more here as well. So you mentioned the 90-day retention limit in Microsoft 365. If we realize a folder was deleted 6 months ago, is there any native Microsoft tool that can get that back, or is it permanently gone? If you've got a retention policy, you might, but that's not a guarantee. If it's gone past the 90 days and you didn't have a retention policy, then that data is probably gone. Next question. During the trial, can we actually test a live restore to see how it works? I think that's a yes, isn't it, Harpal?
Absolutely, yeah. We encourage it. The trial is the full feature version. You can delete a test email, a Teams chat, and you can use our Google-like search and restore it in seconds.
Yeah, and then another question here says, how long does a 30-day trial take to set up? Do we need to install software on every user's machine? No, it's connected to your tenant and it just learns and grabs it. Just if you've ever seen a sign in with Microsoft 365 sort of page, you do that as an admin, and then it will find all your users, right?
Yeah, so you authenticate using your Microsoft Global Admin account with the Acronis console. It begins to discover your users and sites immediately. Most of the clients are up and running in 5-10 minutes, really.
Yeah. I think there's another one here as well. So what happens to the backup if an employee leaves and we've deleted their account? That's retained indefinitely within the Acronis system?
So yeah, if it's, sorry, I didn't catch that. If a user leaves, it depends on the retention policy that the client has set, right? So we've got some customers that will set a month end for 12 months. We've got some that adhere to stricter regulations, and they have to keep the month end for 7 years. So again, you can keep it as long as your retention policy is set.
Great. Okay. All right. I think that's everything. So look, James, Harpal, thanks for your time this afternoon. Been really interesting, and thanks to everybody who's attended as well. And yeah, if you're looking to find out more, obviously please get in touch in terms of your account manager or myself, liam.freeman@klipboard.com. Be happy to share some more detail. We can speak with Harpal and James as well if we need to. Yeah, I just want to thank you for joining. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.